But the people that were right about it, if there's a quarterback coaching complaint here, the people that were right about it, listened to the press conferences where I think one of the worst things that ever got public was one of the most heroic plays in Carolina history, where Sellers takes off and races to the end zone to beat Clemson. They kept harping publicly on, well, he had Nick Harbor open. Well, I mean, look, I love Nick Harbor. Sometimes he drops passes, and things had not gone well. Delvine Campbell, you could have said it was a touchdown, dropped a touchdown. I mean, he took matters into his own hands. I just don't, the more I think back about that, the more I'm like, I just, maybe that wasn't the right move, for a developing quarterback. Little did I know, and I've apologized for this because I didn't see it coming, and a lot of other people did, that this offense was going to change. And like the stuff that Sellers really had to work on. So when they talked about making him a better pocket passer and all that good stuff, I thought, oh, neat, cool. Well, that part of the offense probably left a lot to be desired at times last year. So they're going to just, when they have to call those plays, they're going to work on him being better at executing it. Sounds good to me. I didn't know it was going to be 80% of the passing game. I also didn't know they were going to revert, like they were going to get their offensive line coach, who had his own problems, to install the running game from Mark Trestman's Baltimore Ravens pre-Lamar Jackson. I had no idea that was going to happen. And there's just a lot of things that, you're not privy to in this business all the time. And that I would have sounded the alarms. You guys know me. You know my stance on NFL versus college. I've been saying that probably the whole Beamer era. And so I apologize. I'm sorry. I was all for it. A lot of other people were all for it. It was wrong. It was a wrong call to make. As far as it happening today, I hate it when good people get fired, but it absolutely was the right call and needed to happen probably sooner. I said all week about the Ole Miss game, you don't revert, keep doing what you did against Alabama. Well, it looked good for a little while. Then Lenore's, who had a bad game. Let's just be honest. He had a bad game. I'm not saying that he was, this is all on play calling, but he misfires on a couple, and then all of a sudden against another team with a bad secondary, the idea is to line up and run it. And there's two things that I think did it for me did it for Beamer last night. The end of the first half, you got a pick. You got a minute 39. You're only down 17-7, still in the game. You drive
to get the ball back to start the second half.
Yeah, drive down, get a field goal, whatever. I've seen everybody. Clemson used to be really good at this. They'd get the ball and then get the ball in the second. That the middle eight is what they call it.
Yeah.
And Carolina's out there huddling up and running it, and the clock's just ticking and 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 ticking. And it's like, wow. And that's when Shane Beamer proceeded to go insane on the sidelines into the headset. Louis Riddick talked about it all night long, how he couldn't believe this was the offense and this was the plan. Then, the defense, this has been completely unfair to what I consider to be an overperforming good enough to win unit on defense.
Absolutely.
I think he's done his job this year. Mm-hmm. Look, it was never going to be like last year's defense. I think that's all what we all did think and believe. Was like, hopefully we were sitting there over the summer going, if I'd have told you this is what the defense is going to be this year, like playoff, right? Playoff, because the assumption is we'll just do the same offense and Lenore's will be that much better, and you got weapons and all this stuff, and a better passing game. That's all anybody's worried about. Better passing game, and hopefully the line will block, but they should be able to. Even if the line was as good as last year's, it would have been fine. But none of that happened. But I think it's fundamentally unfair for a defense that plays its butt off, its ass off, really. I mean, last night, it wasn't perfect. They missed some. They had the tackling bugaboo in the first half. Well, guess what? They went in the locker room, made adjustments. Lacey, until the last run of the game, wasn't doing much second half. Trinidad Chambliss, they were defensive tackles were getting him on the ground. Gabriel Brownlow-Dendy, Makel Goodwin, whatever they did to scheme
it looked just like Bama.
It was outstanding by the defense. And so they sit there. The unfortunate punt thing happened. Then all of a sudden it's 20-14. They kick a field goal. All right, Carolina gets the ball back, 11 minutes left. You're down 9, not 8, 9. And South Carolina literally, because Ole Miss was playing back for pass, right? Literally just started running it up the middle 4 or 5 straight times. Now they were turning out first downs. 7 minutes come off the clock. They finally decide to throw, and Lenoris gets sacked 2 or 3 times, and that's a ball game. So next play, Lacey to the house. And so that just kind of did it for me. That just kind of shows you that you had an offensive coordinator that just really could not handle the moment, did not really have good plans. And if you think back through the years, Mike Shula is probably a little bit more well-known as a quarterback's coach than a play caller. He did play call in a Super Bowl, but I think that was wrong too. Everybody gets excited about Cam Newton. You should have been looking at what Cam Newton did at Auburn because and here's my final thoughts on this. I've said it before. Lenore Sellers this year, his performance, he looks like a rookie quarterback in the NFL. He reminded me another guy that was in a bad system for the NFL, but also was going to take. He reminds me of watching Caleb Williams last year with the Bears. So why do those guys that are really good in college struggle when they get up there? Because it's a different game. It's a different system. There are different things that they're asked to do. There's thought, there's process, there's processing and things like that have to take place. And this is not Lenoris's game yet. And it's not the University of South Carolina's responsibility to have him take his lumps in college and go 3-6 so he can go have a better rookie year, especially when you consider this. And it's my final thought.
Yeah, this is
who's the best quarterback in the NFL? Patrick Mahomes. What offensive system did he come out of? The air raid, the Mike Leach style Cliff Kingsbury air raid at Texas Tech. Okay. What's another great quarterback? Josh Allen. You know what he ran at Wyoming? The option.
Yeah.
I mean, they don't care up there. It's not your responsibility. You don't get any bonus points for doing this. And I'm not saying that it was, oh my God, let's get Lenoris better. I just think there was just a complete disconnect and kind of a, I don't know. I'm glad for the sake of the football program for the rest of this year it happened, but long term, this is an important hire. It's important to get this right at this point because the clock is ticking on this, and people don't want to see bad offense anymore. And this has been the worst of those years. Marcus Satterfield would have one good game and then blow it up and start over like I don't know what he was thinking. Dowell Loggins was about a C+, right?
Yeah, but JC, you sit there with Dowell, and one thing I will say is we didn't realize the Lonnie issues. The Lonnie was an offensive line. Maybe a miracle worker.
Yeah. Well, yeah, especially in 2023 and even last year, but C+ probably all told. I still think people didn't like him because his name was Dowell Loggins and not Garrett Riley. But
the second half of that season last year figured it out offensively.
Yeah, I think he started.
They're like, oh, let's just use Lenoris. Let's use his legs. And then the play calls really started to come with Loggins. Where think back to that Texas A&M game where he's dialing up kind of that fake option play where Simon kind of leaks out and gets a touchdown. That was kind of the thing just from a play calling standpoint. Was last night you had that option play, they ran it a few times in that game and it just never worked. And they felt like they kind of kept going back into something we've talked about on this show and other shows on Chief Sports is just feel like they're trying to force the run game to get it going when it has been working.
Yeah. If Dowell had one thing, he got conservative sometimes. That's ticky tack though, compared to problem number A and problem C. Problem A had no reason to do this. He spent 1 year up there as an assistant getting coffee under Matt Rule, and then comes back and believes he's Andy Reid and screwed that to the pooch. When they finally said, stop doing this and just call it like you did at Temple or Texas Tech, offense was pretty good. They beat 2 top 10 teams because he just had 10 plays on a sheet to go do it. Shula's fundamentally different with worse results because there has been no. Carolina's the only team in FBS that hadn't had 350 yards of total offense this year in any game. I mean, it's awful. There's no Marcus Satterfield, he figured it out for one game upside here. It is just bottom. And it's a guy that, unfortunately, fellas, is not adapted to college football as a play caller, probably past his prime as a play caller. A good guy, really good quarterbacks coach. And it just was a disaster. And that's unfortunate, but I'm glad the decision was made and it's time to move on. And again, I personally apologize to everybody that I ever got behind this. Had I, in hindsight, certainly wouldn't have.
And to your point on that, JC, that's something that Shane Beamer kind of talked about tonight when he was kind of asked, like, looking back on it with hindsight being 2020 on the hire after the 2024 season. He kind of mentioned some of the things that you mentioned where it made sense for the hire with. He had worked with Lenoris. He had some of that NFL things. They kind of working in the NFL. But it just, hasn't worked out. And, I mean, there's a lot of things we can, I'm sure we're going to get into here to tonight. But just, I think last night you could really kind of see the frustrations with Shane Beamer post-game in the press conference, especially when he was asked about the second half, right towards that the 2-minute drive where they just did not get anything going. You had to run up the middle to start it and then had to call timeout. Like, it just wasn't working. Like, he was asked about that. You could just really kind of feel the frustrations in his voice with some of the offense and the play calling and things like that. And that's what made me think that this was going to happen tonight or sometime today.
Yeah, I think that – I had people texting me last night. Some folks can just read a message board and they can read the room. And if you've read the Big Spur here for a while, if anybody in the football office was reading the room, you probably had an idea that fans were probably going to not even show up for Coastal, all of that. But, JC, I hate the hindsight 2020 of in certain games you see on message boards, right? We should have gone for the extra point instead of the 2-point conversion, blah, blah, blah. The game would have changed. I don't like that because that's like just quick. You can do some quick math. But I like to go back and look why in hindsight 2020 back 6 months ago can we say this was the wrong decision? And, when I'm talking to my sources, one of the things that I heard all offseason was the offense was much further ahead than the defense. I heard that the offense was going to have to carry the defense. And that was a mantra not just from Tony on the Big Spur. We all heard it. And then when I probed a little deeper right before the final preseason scrimmage, I found out that Dylan Stewart wasn't on the field a lot for the defense in the summer and the fall because he wrecked everything. They had to take him off the field to be able to run the offense. And looking at how this defensive line has played, you can't really compare them to last year, but they've played pretty well, especially these last couple of games. And you kind of see, well, maybe the writing was actually on the wall back in the fall. And then you get really frustrated when you see the first couple games of the season play out the way they did. And then you're going into the LSU game with a chance to fix your season, right? And it's a bye week. And maybe if you hadn't seen it and on the practice field in the games, you just say, look, got to cut bait. Sorry, Mike, great guy. Pay that buyout. Wish you well. We'll give you great referrals for anything you want in life. But that's going to be the thing that sticks in Gamecock fans' crawls is the fact that this season could have potentially been saved by the way you see the offensive line performing post-Teasley. And who knows, JC, and maybe this offense rolls up 450 yards a game the last 3 games.
Let's talk about it. Let's scream and shout it. Let's fire everybody fast.